Anna stared at the clock on the wall. The ticking was loud in the silence of the room, but it was nothing compared to the storm in her chest. It was nearly 10 p.m., and Marcus wasn't home yet. Again. The children had been asking about their father all day, their innocent voices tinged with disappointment. Anna had no answers for them, only vague reassurances she didn't believe herself. When the sound of keys jingling at the door broke the stillness, her heart jumped. She stood up quickly, smoothing the wrinkles in her dress, but stopped herself. Why was she still trying? Marcus had grown distant, his affection turning cold. She watched as he walked in. He didn't even glance her way. "Anna," he said, his voice cold and flat. He didn't sit or take off his jacket. Instead, he walked over to the dining table and slapped a thick stack of papers onto the surface. Anna blinked at him, confused. "Marcus, what's this?" He folded his arms, his face hard. "I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean you're leaving? Where are you going?" "I deserve better, Anna," he said, pacing the room. His voice was sharp, cutting into her like glass. "I'm a rich man now. I worked hard for this life. I can't be with someone like you, someone who doesn't fit the image of success. I need someone younger, more beautiful, sophisticated. You're holding me back." Anna stared at him, her breath caught in her throat. "Marcus, we've been through so much together. We built this life. He raised a hand to cut her off. "Save it. I've made up my mind. The papers are for the divorce. My lawyer has already handled everything. You get nothing." Her eyes darted to the stack of documents on the table. The edges of the paper seemed to mock her, the bold legal text screaming her insignificance in his new world. "Nothing. Marcus, I'm the mother of your children." "And if you fight me," he continued, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather, "my lawyer will make sure you lose. You'll get no money, and I'll take the kids to the village to live with my mother. You can't afford a lawyer, Anna. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The room spun. Anna stood up, her hands trembling. "Marcus, don't do this. We're your family. The children—" "I've thought about the children," he said, his face hard. "They'll be fine. This is what's best for me." "Best for you?" she repeated, her voice shaking. Tears pooled in her eyes. "You don't even care about what happens to us, do you?" Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he straightened his jacket, turned on his heel and walked toward the door. As he opened it, he paused and looked back. "You can sign the papers or not? It doesn't matter. My lawyer will make sure it goes my way either way." Then he was gone. The sound of the door slamming echoed in the apartment, louder than it had any right to be. Anna stood frozen, staring at the stack of papers on the table. Her legs felt like they would give way, but she forced herself to stay upright. She heard her children's laughter in the next room, oblivious to the storm that had just ripped through their lives. For a moment she thought about running after him, begging him to stay, to think about their family. But then she saw her reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. Her tear-streaked face stared back at her, and she clenched her fists. No, she thought, she wouldn't beg. But as she sank back into the couch, her heart broke into pieces, and the tears she had been holding back finally spilled over. Years ago, the bustling streets of Accra were where Anna and Marcus's story began. Anna was a young woman working as a housekeeper at a modest hotel near the city centre. Her job was tiring and unglamorous, but it put food on the table. Marcus, on the other hand, spent his days weaving through the crowded streets, hawking phone credit and bottles of cold water. His morning started early, with him lugging a heavy cooler on his head, the straps biting into his shoulders as he called out to passers-by. Life was tough, and he often went home with more sweat than money, but he never stopped smiling. The two met by chance one humid afternoon. Anna had stepped out of the hotel for her lunch break, and spotted Marcus leaning against a lamp-post, his cooler set down beside him. His face was tired, but when their eyes met he smiled, a shy, boyish grin that caught her off guard. "Good afternoon," he said, adjusting his faded polo shirt. "Would you like some water? It's cold." Anna hesitated, but eventually smiled back. "Why not? How much?" He waved his hand. "For you? It's on me." She laughed softly, her cheeks warming. "I don't take free things. Here." She handed him a coin and took the water. From that day their paths crossed often. Marcus started timing his breaks to coincide with Anna's, showing up near the hotel just as she stepped out. They talked about small things, work, family, the struggles of city life. But their connection grew. Marcus was different from the others who had tried to win Anna's heart. He was sincere, hard-working, and hopeful despite his circumstances. One day he gathered the courage to ask her, "Anna, would you go out with me? I know I don't have much, but I promise to always treat you right." Anna hesitated. She knew he was struggling just like her, but there was something genuine about Marcus. Finally, she nodded. "All right. Let's see where this goes." Their relationship blossomed. After a year, they got married in a simple ceremony. There was no fancy cake or expensive decorations, just love and hope for a better future. Marcus moved into Anna's tiny room, and together they began building their life. Anna's determination to support her husband shone through. She used her connections at the hotel to secure Marcus a job as a security guard. He traded his hawker's cooler for a uniform, standing tall at the hotel gates. Though the pay was modest, it gave them stability. They dreamed of saving enough to move to a better place and start a family. When their first child was born, their joy was immeasurable, the small apartment filled with baby laughter and the scent of warm porridge. But as the years passed and 2 more children arrived, life became harder. Anna had to quit her job after complications with her 3rd pregnancy, leaving Marcus as the sole breadwinner. Despite the challenges, they found moments of happiness in the little things, family meals, bedtime stories, and the hope that one day things would get better. Then came the turning point in Marcus's life. One day, while working at the hotel gate, he overheard 2 wealthy businessmen discussing a gold mining deal. Marcus, always eager to learn and seize opportunities, struck up a conversation with one of them. It led to a chance for him to invest his small savings into the deal, which, against all odds, paid off. Suddenly, Marcus had money, more than he had ever dreamed of. He bought new clothes, a sleek car, and moved the family to a slightly larger apartment. Anna was thrilled at first, thinking their hard work was finally paying off. But as Marcus's wealth grew, so did his ego. He changed in ways Anna could hardly recognize. The humble, loving man she had married was replaced by someone consumed by pride and greed. He began spending more time with his new business associates, coming home late or not at all. He started criticizing Anna, pointing out her weight after childbirth, or the wrinkles on her face, and comparing her to the glamorous women in his new social circles. "You should look better for a man like me," he once said, brushing past her as she served dinner. Anna, hurt but hopeful, tried to brush it off. She clung to memories of the man she had married, hoping his warmth would return. Instead, the distance between them grew, until one fateful day it shattered entirely. When Marcus walked out of their lives, Anna's world crumbled. In the days that followed, Anna was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions that seemed to pull her in different directions. Her heart ached with a deep sadness, as though a vital piece of her life had been torn away. She had loved Marcus completely, standing by him through years of struggle and hardship, only to be discarded when their lives had started to improve. The man she had trusted, the one she believed would always be her partner, had coldly abandoned her and their children. His cruel words, "You're not good enough for me," echoed in her mind, leaving a wound that seemed impossible to heal. Each night as her children slept, Anna sat in the dim light, replaying the moments of their life together. She thought of the early days when they had so little, yet still found joy in the small things. She remembered his promises to always care for her and the family they had built. Now those memories felt like cruel lies, mocking her for believing in him. Her mind churned with confusion. She couldn't understand how Marcus had changed so much. How could he, the man who had once adored her, turn so cold? She questioned herself endlessly, wondering if she had done something wrong or missed the signs of his unhappiness. No matter how much she searched for answers, none came. As the shock began to wear off, a fiery anger began to take its place. Anna thought of the sacrifices she had made, leaving her job to care for their children, supporting Marcus when he had nothing, and being his rock through their hardest times. He had taken her love and loyalty for granted, abandoning her the moment he found wealth and a life he thought was better. She clenched her fists as she thought of how easily he had left their children behind, as though they were nothing more than an afterthought. The betrayal cut deeper than words could express. Beneath the heartbreak and anger, fear loomed like a shadow. Anna had 3 young children who depended on her for everything. Without Marcus's support, she had no steady income and no savings to fall back on. Each day felt like a race against time as bills piled up and the cupboards grew emptier. She lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with worry about how she would keep a roof over their heads or food on the table. The thought of failing her children filled her with a dread that she couldn't escape. While Anna and her children struggled, Marcus lived a life of luxury. He moved into a grand mansion in one of Accra's affluent neighborhoods, a far cry from the cramped apartment he once shared with his family. The mansion, with its marble floors and fountain, symbolized his transformation. Inside, expensive furniture and artwork filled the space, and Marcus hosted extravagant parties to flaunt his success. His life revolved around appearances. He surrounded himself with admirers, attended high-profile events, and became a regular at upscale restaurants, spending lavishly to reinforce his new image. Marcus indulged in every luxury: sleek cars, designer suits, and gold watches. Each purchase was proof of his success. He began dating Rose, a younger, glamorous woman who embodied the life he wanted. Marcus believed she admired him, but in truth she was drawn to his wealth. She encouraged Marcus to spend money recklessly. Meanwhile, Anna's world became a heavy, grey blur of worry and exhaustion. She spent her days trying to piece together a way to survive. The apartment was quieter now, but the silence only made her fears louder. Bills piled up on the corner of the dining table, and the children were too young to fully understand why their father wasn't coming home. One morning Anna opened the cupboard and stared at the almost empty shelves. A small bag of rice and a tin of sardines sat in the corner, barely enough for one meal. She sighed deeply, her chest tight. The children were playing in the other room, their laughter mixed with the sound of toy cars scraping against the floor. She didn't want them to see her cry, so she wiped her eyes and forced herself to think of a plan. She began walking through the streets of Accra, going from shop to shop, asking if they needed help. But every time, the answer was the same: no jobs available. Her heart sank further with each rejection. She couldn't blame them. There were so many others just like her, desperate for work. By the time she returned home, her feet were aching and the sun was setting. Her eldest, Kwesi, met her at the door. "Mama, I'm hungry," he said softly, looking up at her with wide eyes. "I know, Kwesi," she said, kneeling down to hug him. "I'll make something, okay? It's going to be all right." That night she cooked the last of the rice and divided it carefully among the 3 children. She pretended she wasn't hungry, telling them she'd already eaten, but the gnawing in her stomach kept her awake long after they had gone to sleep. The following morning Anna's stomach churned with worry. The rent was overdue, and there was barely any money left for food. She picked up her old phone, the screen cracked but functional, and hesitated. She hadn't called Marcus in weeks. The last time she asked for money, he had dismissed her like she was a beggar on the street. But tonight, desperation pushed her. She dialed his number, her fingers trembling. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "What is it, Anna?" Marcus's voice was curt, irritated. "Marcus, I need money for the children," she said, her voice steady but pleading. "They need new school supplies and food. I can't manage alone." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Marcus laughed, a cold, mocking sound that made Anna's chest tighten. "You think I'm your bank, Anna? I've already given you enough." "You haven't given us anything," she snapped, the words bursting out before she could stop them. "You left us with nothing, Marcus. These are your children too. Don't they matter to you?" "You don't get to lecture me," he said, his tone sharp. "I've moved on. If you can't take care of them, that's on you." Anna's throat tightened as the line went dead. She stared at the phone in her hand, the emptiness of his words cutting deeper than any insult. She set the phone down and buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A week later, things went from bad to worse. Her youngest child, Kofi, woke up in the middle of the night screaming in pain. His tiny body was burning with fever, and his cries echoed in the cramped apartment. Anna rushed to his side, cradling him in her arms. "It's okay, Kofi," she whispered, though her voice shook with panic. "Mama's here." The next morning she carried him to the nearest clinic. After a long wait, the doctor examined him and told her the news. Kofi needed surgery. The cost was staggering, far beyond anything Anna could afford. Her heart sank as she stepped out of the clinic, holding Kofi close. The weight of her son in her arms felt heavier than ever. She thought of Marcus again, the man who once promised to protect their family. Maybe, she thought, he would help this time, for Kofi's sake. With a determination born of desperation, Anna spent the next few days tracking down Marcus's new address. Old friends whispered about the mansion he had bought in a wealthy part of the city. It was a place she had never imagined visiting, but for her child she would do anything. When she arrived at the towering gates of the mansion, her heart pounded in her chest. The gates were sleek and imposing, with a security guard standing watch. Anna explained who she was, her voice cracking with nerves, and after a long pause, the guard let her in. She walked up the polished driveway, clutching Kofi's medical papers tightly. The mansion loomed above her, its white walls gleaming in the sunlight. When Marcus opened the door, he was dressed in an expensive shirt, his face a mix of annoyance and surprise. "Anna, what are you doing here?" "Marcus," she began, her voice trembling. "Kofi is sick. He needs surgery, and I don't have the money. Please help us. He's your son." Behind him, Rose, his lover, appeared, draped in designer clothes. She leaned against the doorway, her eyes scanning Anna with open disdain. "Is this the woman you told me about?" she said, smirking. "She looks tired." Anna's cheeks burned with shame, but she forced herself to stand tall. "I'm here for my son," she said firmly, ignoring the woman. "Marcus, please." Marcus sighed and rubbed his temples. "Anna, I can't help you. I have my own expenses." "Your own expenses," Anna repeated, her voice rising. "This is your child, Marcus. How can you stand there and say that?" Rose laughed softly. "Marcus, darling, just send her away. This is embarrassing." Marcus nodded, his face hardening. "You heard her, Anna. Leave." Anna felt her knees weaken as the door slammed in her face. She stood there for a moment, clutching the medical papers, before turning and walking back down the driveway. Her vision blurred with tears, but she refused to let them fall. That night, as she sat on her bed holding Kofi's tiny hand, the weight of her situation crushed her. She had no money, no support, and no idea how she would save her son. Marcus had turned his back on them completely, and the world felt darker than ever. One morning, Anna decided to go to the market for groceries with the little money she had. She carefully picked out the essentials: rice, beans, oil, and headed to the cashier. The cashier scanned the items and announced the amount. Anna's stomach sank. It was higher than she expected. She fumbled in her purse, pulling out all the cash she had, but it wasn't enough. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her cheeks burning as she avoided the impatient glances of the people in line behind her. "I'll put some things back." The cashier sighed and reached for the items, but before Anna could decide what to leave, a voice behind her interrupted. "Excuse me," a man's voice said from behind her. "Let me pay for that." Anna turned and saw a man standing behind her, holding a few groceries of his own. He was tall, with a kind face and calm eyes. He smiled warmly as he handed the money to the cashier. "You don't have to do that," Anna said, her voice shaky. "Thank you, but "It's okay," he said, cutting her off gently. "I'm happy to help." Anna felt tears prick her eyes as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. The man, who introduced himself as Richard, helped her carry her groceries to the street. As they walked, he noticed her exhaustion and the worry etched on her face. "Are you all right?" he asked. "You look like you've been through a lot." Anna hesitated, but eventually opened up. She told him about her struggles, her children, and Kofi's need for surgery. As she spoke, Richard listened intently, his expression softening. When they reached the bus stop, he paused. "Look," he said, "I know someone who might be able to help. My boss is an elderly man who needs a housekeeper and caregiver. He's been looking for someone reliable, and from what you've told me, you'd be perfect for the job." Anna blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. "A job?" she asked, hope flickering in her voice. Richard nodded. "It's steady work, and it comes with accommodation. You and your kids could move in. It's outside the city, but I think it could be a fresh start for you." Tears rolled down Anna's cheeks as she clutched the grocery bag tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't know what this means to me." A week later, Anna moved into the outhouse on the elderly man's estate with her children. The property was large and serene, surrounded by lush greenery. The outhouse, though small, was cosy and far better than their cramped apartment in the city. The old man, Mr. Mensa, was reserved at first, but warmed to Anna quickly. Her attention to detail and kind demeanour won him over. She worked tirelessly, cleaning, cooking, and caring for him. With her earnings, Anna managed to save enough to schedule Kofi's surgery. On the day of the operation, Richard drove her and Kofi to the hospital, his presence a calming force. Anna sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap while Richard sat beside her. The surgery was a success, and Anna wept with relief when the doctor told her Kofi would recover fully. She held her son close, feeling hope bloom in her heart for the first time in months. Months passed, and Anna's life began to stabilize. Mr. Mensa grew fond of her, often calling her the light of the house. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep, Anna was heartbroken. But to her astonishment, his lawyer revealed that Mr. Mensa had left her a significant part of his fortune. "You gave him dignity and joy in his final days," the lawyer explained. "He wanted to show his gratitude." With the money, Anna started a cleaning company, hiring other women who needed work. The business grew quickly beyond what she had imagined. What started as a small team cleaning a few homes turned into a well-known company that catered to offices, hotels, and high-end clients. Anna employed dozens of women, many of whom, like her, had faced tough times and needed a fresh start. Every day, she felt proud of the work she was doing, not just for herself, but for the community she was building. Meanwhile, Marcus's life took a dark turn. Eager to grow his wealth even further, Marcus began making risky investments. One of these was a scheme that promised massive returns with minimal effort. The scheme seemed like a golden opportunity at first, and Marcus poured a significant amount of money into it. Encouraged by the early profits, he doubled down, withdrawing more funds and even selling some assets to invest more. However, like all pyramid schemes, it eventually collapsed. When the flow of new investors dried up, Marcus lost nearly everything he had put into it. To make matters worse, when Marcus began facing financial troubles, he confided in Rose, hoping for support. Instead, she betrayed him. She persuaded him to transfer the remaining money into a joint account and promised to help manage their finances. Once she gained access, she emptied the account and disappeared with another man, leaving Marcus with nothing. As his wealth crumbled, Marcus found himself drowning in debts. The bank repossessed his mansion and cars when he failed to pay his loans and overdue bills. Creditors seized whatever assets he had left, and his belongings were auctioned off to cover what little he could repay. Stripped of his fortune and abandoned by those he had trusted, Marcus was forced to return to the streets of Accra. He went back to selling phone credit and water, the very hustle he had once escaped. The same streets that had seen his rise now witnessed his fall, a humbling reminder of how fleeting wealth could be. Marcus was left alone, burdened by regret, and the knowledge that his choices had cost him not only his fortune, but also the family and life he had taken for granted. One sunny afternoon, Anna was walking down a busy street with Richard when she spotted a familiar figure across the street. Her breath caught for a moment. It was Marcus. He stood on the corner, holding a stack of phone credit cards and calling out to passers-by. His clothes were wrinkled, his once polished shoes scuffed and dusty. His face looked older, his eyes tired, and his shoulders slumped as if the weight of his choices had finally caught up to him. Marcus's eyes widened when he saw Anna. He hesitated, then walked toward her, his steps slow and unsure. "Anna," he called softly, his voice hoarse. Anna stopped, her hand tightening around Richard's. She turned to face Marcus, her expression calm but unreadable. "Anna," Marcus said again when he reached her. His voice cracked as he spoke. I've been looking for you. I lost everything. The investments failed and she left me. She took the last of my money." Anna looked at him quietly, her gaze steady. She didn't interrupt. "I know I made mistakes," Marcus continued, his words tumbling out. "Big ones. I was blinded by greed, by pride. I didn't see what I had. You and the kids were everything, and I threw it all away. Please, Anna, I'm begging you, forgive me, give me another chance." Richard stepped forward slightly, his protective stance unmistakable. Anna raised a hand, silently asking him to let her handle it. She turned back to Marcus. "You had your chance, Marcus," she said softly but firmly. "Many chances, and every time you chose yourself over your family. You left us when we needed you most." Marcus's face crumpled. "I was a fool, Anna. Please, I'll do anything to make it right." Anna shook her head, her expression resolute. "It's too late. I've moved on. The children and I are happy now. We've built a life without you." With that, she turned and walked away. Marcus stood frozen, watching her disappear into the crowd. The weight of his regret was overwhelming, but there was nothing he could do to fix what he had broken. He had lost his family, his wealth, and his dignity, and now he was truly alone. As Anna walked home, she felt a deep sense of closure. The pain of the past no longer defined her. She had survived, rebuilt, and created a life filled with joy and hope, and that, she knew, was her greatest triumph. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more great content. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might enjoy it too. See you in the next one.